ecosystem. What is it all about? Is it just a buzzword? And if not, how can we forge a meaningful path ahead with it? But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, please do take note. We'll put up the Slido QR code for you to have your questions ready, so that when we do have our Q&A session, you have those questions ready for our panelists. Web3 ecosystem. Maybe for a lot of us, this is a new word that we have yet to hear, while for some of you, it's something that you have been eagerly anticipating. So I'm really looking forward to this next session that we have for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, wait. So 1, 2, okay. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2.
All right, as we prepare our panelists and our moderator for this upcoming session, ladies and gentlemen, please do share your feedback via this QR code. We'd really love to hear what you think about our sessions earlier in panel 2, earlier on drone tech, and also on panel 4, is Malaysia ready to be a data-driven nation? We really appreciate your feedback and hearing what you have to say about our sessions today and on Malaysia Digital as a whole. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the QR code up on the screen for you. For any questions that you may have regarding Malaysia's Web3 ecosystem, please do send in your questions throughout the session, and we will bring up the questions for you as soon as the panel session is done. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for our next session, building the path ahead for Malaysia's Web3 ecosystem, I'd like to invite on stage our moderator for the session. Mohan Lau is the head of digital creative content at MDEC, where he helps drive the mission to develop the digital creative content industry in Malaysia. With over 15 years of experience in the digital content space, Mohan has a particular interest in leading teams across games development, games commercialization, and now ecosystem building, having launched over 30 games during the course of his career. So we have no one better to run this session than you, Mohan. So take it away in introducing our panelists. Over to you.
All right. Thank you, MC. Pretty honored today to have such a prestigious and original team of entrepreneurs and thought leaders in the Web3 space in Malaysia. Yeah. So I'm not going to do justice by introducing themselves. So I'm going to leverage and get them to do a quick, short, brief introduction about themselves.
Shall I start?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Ganesh Kumar Banga. I'm the executive chairman of NetCentric Limited. Serial tech entrepreneur myself. I was involved in payments in the year 2000, started a company called MOL. And then from there, I went into social networking, acquired Friendster in 2010. From there, actually went to e-commerce, started an e-commerce ecosystem called Commerce.Asia, which I'm also the executive chairman of and founder, where today we have 92,000 merchants with a gross merchandise volume of 1.5 billion US last year. And about 2 years ago, I acquired a company called NetCentric, which I'm representing here today, that owns the largest influencer marketing platform in Malaysia, Nafnang. And just a couple of months ago, we started to expand into Web3, where we invested in a company called NFT Technologies and are creating an NFT technology platform to enable Malaysian creators and also global creators to issue utility NFTs with a good user experience as well, leveraging on distribution through our influencer network.
Hello everyone, my name is Effendi. I'm the president and the founder of a Crypto Valley Malaysia Association. We are a non-profit tech movement where we gather the players, industry people in the cryptographic tech and blockchain. And also we do awareness, R&D with a lot of government agencies such as Cybersecurity Malaysia. And I'm also the CEO of a Blockwork, where we do a lot of system integration on the blockchain, such as blockchain for certificates, security documents, halal supply blockchain, and of course now we also involved with a Web3 that focusing on the metaverse, where we are developing some sort of a metaverse university education, and I'm so happy to be here, and we will share a lot after this on Web3. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Jensen here. I'm more from the gaming side of blockchain, so probably the more fun stuff, I guess. Effectively, I'm from PathDAO, co-founder of PathDAO. What we do is we are builders in the gaming ecosystem, in the blockchain ecosystem. And one of our key, we do investments in a lot of blockchain games, but one of our key flagship products is effectively a social network for gamers, where we build a social network powered by blockchain, powered by NFTs, powered by currency, to build this whole new interaction between gamers and content creators. So yeah, that's about me.
Right.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I'm from Etherscan. So basically what we do is we build search engines for the blockchain to allow folks to look up information and just figure out what's happening on the blockchain. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Faz. I am the CEO of MX Global. We are a regulated or legal cryptocurrency exchange here in Malaysia. I also advise a layer 1 blockchain project called Citrix, which most recently has partnered with MIMOS and the Malaysian government to create the Malaysian blockchain infrastructure. So we're the public chain partner for that, to kind of build cross-borders, real-world use cases.
All right. So I think some of these guys are super humble in a way they describe themselves. But anyway, let's explore, like, why Web3, right? Web3 is considered this upcoming technology that's going to be defining how businesses are going to be run in the future, and a lot of other use cases. But what are the best use cases, or why are we looking into Web3 in general, right? How does it help the general people? Perhaps, Ganesh, you could take this one first.
Sure, I think it's still the early days, to be honest, when it comes to Web3. If you look at the blockchain, a lot of the real applications for blockchain are still yet to be there, yet to be developed. I always give a analogy that if you look back at the year 2008, I believe, when Uber started, why was Uber actually created in the year 2008? Why wasn't it created in the year 2000? Why wasn't it created in the year 2020, for example? Because there was a technology that was enabled on the iPhone. It was a GPS technology. It was a notification technology. Notifications actually helped WhatsApp be created. If there was no notifications in your handphone, WhatsApp wouldn't be here today. If there was no GPS in your handphone, Uber wouldn't be here today. It's those technologies that actually enabled the real-life applications to be created. Now today, if we look at blockchain, it is a technology there, and the applications are really fresh to be developed, right? And some of those applications, of course, are being developed today by, I think, not only the people on the stage, but people from all over the world. The biggest differentiation we have in Malaysia today compared to before when it comes to blockchain and Web3 is we're actually at the same level as everybody else. I've been starting to spend actually time in the Web3 space over the last 1 to 2 months and realized the number of real-world applications that are being created in Malaysia is amazing. And some of these applications are fresh, like there are no copycats, like you're not copying like Grab copying Uber, right? You're not copying applications in the US. They're really creating fresh applications, new applications that actually can become global first. And I think therein lies the opportunity in Web3, is that we can create applications leveraging on this technology, blockchain, that's still fresh out of the gate. And with that, we can build global applications from here in Malaysia. One of the key usage of Web3, really, if you look at the entire industry, is actually the disruption of monopolies. The value of blockchain is you can easily disrupt monopolies very easily. I was having lunch last week at Token 2049, which was a blockchain event. A friend of mine invited me for lunch with this guy who just 1 year ago, 2 years ago, before the pandemic, was selling food in a gym in LA. Today he runs the biggest NFT conference in the world, NFT LA. And he's now developing an application to disrupt YouTube. So he's developing a platform where YouTubers or other content creators can really put up their videos on this platform, and consumers can go and look at those videos, and sponsors can also join this platform. And the money given by the sponsors, part of it goes to the consumers, and he wants to disrupt YouTube. blockchain enables the next real disruption, and without blockchain, it's difficult to get that opportunity.
All right. Cool.
Maybe I can touch a little bit on the layman perspective on what is actually Web 3.0, because a lot of the definition from scholars, academicians, industry players. Web 3 actually is an upcoming third generations of internet where websites and apps will be smart thinking like human to process data by using AI, machine learning, blockchain, and a lot of emerging tech. And this term of a Web 3 coined by Dr. Gavin Wood. He's a co-founder of Ethereum, and then also the founder of Polkadot as well, and Parity programming language for Ethereum base. So by having this Web 3 means that, if I can see it like this, Web 1.0 actually is for just the internet, right? Web 2.0 is a social internet, while Web 3.0 actually is a semantic web, where I think AI will be there, machine learning, and the best thing about Web 3 actually is about how we can control our data. Like before this, our data, if you use Facebook, Google will benefitize your data. So this thing. And second thing about the use cases, there are a lot of use cases. For example, metaverse now. In fact, Facebook also changed to the Meta, the name. And then next gen gaming, next gen dApps, virtual co-working place, virtual reality for land. For example, I'm part of the industry advisory panel for several universities to talk about how we can create our own solution on real estate, for example. So this thing actually, the value came because of these use cases. So what value actually from these use cases? It's about transaction. For me, metaverse is about transaction. Your kids, my kids actually play Roblox. I can say also Roblox is a part of the Web3 application, right? They buy Robux, always power my money, to buy the Robux, for example, right? So Decentraland, sandbox, you can have your own virtual land, you can transact it, you can transact. Now a lot of a movement that if you use metaverse, you do some transaction, you can have visibility in terms of your brand. Justin Bieber, for example, now having their own, he had his own branding in metaverse on metaverse concert. Like me, I'm working with Siti Nurhaliza to develop the first virtual and metaverse concept for her. So I think it's the things that we can apply in terms of use cases and also
Interesting.
Value for the Web3. Thank you.
Interesting. Who wants a ticket to your online virtual concert? Does anybody else have any other thoughts on that?
Just a quick add-on to what you said, right? I think one of the key words here is ownership, right? And I think one of the most exciting things that you can do when you own things, it's very different in a Web3 world where you actually own it versus a Web2 world where you don't really own it. They say you kind of own it, but in the end, it's actually controlled and it's actually owned by a centralized institution or force, right? One example, it could be social identities, right? And you hear all these things called NFTs, right? You see a picture of an ape, and you'd be like, why do people pay $100,000, right, for a picture like that? Okay, at a point, people are paying $400,000 for just a picture like that, right? I think the power behind that is because it's not just a picture. It's something that you can own, you can verify that you actually own it. And that's the only piece of picture, verifiable, that I actually own it. And because of that, suddenly unlocks so many things. Two things that probably will excite people like you guys, right? It's social status, right? Because when I own something and I can prove the ownership of something, suddenly that value becomes so much more powerful. And the beauty about NFTs that we see today is like, today, I don't know how many of you guys wear Rolexes or your Patek Philippe, right? The idea is that, okay, cool, right? It brings up my social status. I actually own it. That's amazing. But the beauty around the world that we live in now is such a digital world. I can't really show my Rolex constantly on my Twitter. Can I post a bit of photo, try to flex my arm, right? But the beauty about NFT PFPs, for example, right? It's a photo that you know for sure is yours, and that becomes your identity, right? And that unlocks an entire whole social paradigm and societies and status. That's one. On the other hand of things is then, because you actually own these assets, you can actually do so much with it. One example is that you could financialize almost everything. An example, let's say I buy a ticket to, I don't know, you mentioned Siti Nurhaliza's concert, right? Yeah, Metaverse concert, right? And the ticket maybe costs, I don't know, 500 ringgit, 1,000 ringgit, okay? To a layman, that's a lot of money, right? But because I own this, let's say the ticket is an NFT ticket, right? And because this is it's so easy to prove that I own this ticket, I can easily pawn it, quote unquote, and I can maybe unlock 60% of its worth, 600 ringgit, in cash, right? And I can use this cash to feed my dog, water my plants, right? So you can do so much things. This is one example, right, of how financialization can affect normal goods that we typically just use on a daily basis, because these are truly owned by the user. Yeah, that's my extra 2 cents on that.
Still got time or not? Got time.
Go, you can divert. We can let this be a casual conversation. Yeah.
Super. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing I want to say is, I think when you mention Web3 to regular folks, right, it scares them away. No, it's like Web3. What is Web3? I would like to define it more as an extension of Web2 to address shortcomings of Web2. Having said that, I think the way I look at it, you break it down to two very large segments. So the first one is an enabler or means of transferring value. The second one being, it's basically a distributed database where you can build stuff on top. So looking at it from this angle, right, we can see being applied to the existing verticals, the existing industry. You have gaming, right, for instance. So what we've seen, like very early use cases of gaming, is the points within games are being tokenized. So that adds more liquidity, adds more value to the gamers. Then you have verticals like Metaverse, right? So Metaverse, we've seen it already happening with people buying virtual lands that are basically NFTs, right? And then you have it with traditional finance. So obviously in finance, it's already being done. You have this thing called DeFi, decentralized finance, where you can take loans and just a variety of things that are being done then. And last but not least, I think as a general purpose platform, you're able to build what we call decentralized applications, like what has been mentioned earlier. So I think looking at this stuff, that's kind of how I look at it. It's demystifying it. It's an extension of Web 2 to address shortcomings by providing these two things that I mentioned above. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so I totally agree with a lot what the panelists said. The way I kind of think about it is, right, like, whether you call it Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, I mean, I guess only Jack Dorsey wants to call it Web 5, right? It's, as some of the panelists have shared, right, it's to address the shortcomings of what we today experience as the internet. So if you go back in time and see how the internet was designed, it originally was, I think, a series called an ARPANET, right? So it dictated how computers speak to each other, essentially nodes talking to each other. In this generation of what we have is the internet, by design, it lacks two fundamental layers, right? Number one is an identity layer. That's why whoever you are on the internet, your kind of internet identity is your IP, but then there's nothing more than that. You can elect to have a Gmail address, but that's not the same as saying that that's really you. And the second is a financial layer, right? The internet was specifically designed not to handle financial transactions natively. And so what I believe we're seeing in the last, you could say 7 years, are iterations of people trying to solve these two key problems that didn't exist in the original internet, but could unlock a new generation of commerce through this revised, or what we call Web3 experience. So I think the jury is still out in terms of what will really constitute Web3 long term, but for sure a lot of what people have been experimenting with, whether it's PFPs around identity, whether it's kind of like your DeFi and financializing different tokenization of assets and all that, I think these are obvious things to address because we cannot really do it natively on the existing internet.
All right, so to summarize, Web3 is kind of building on Web2. It's an enhancement. It's disrupting the existing, Web2 spaces and creating new kind of apps, right? New kind of utilities, right? Cool. So I'm going to condense my questions, I think, because of time. So let's, we talked about building global applications, and do we have the right talent? Do we have the right infrastructure in place, right, to develop this? Are we ready to take on a global challenge in this space? Actually?
Okay, I think it's a very good question from Mohan. So we talk about talent. Talent is a very quite, it's quite challenging for us to develop such as this talent. Because why? Because we can say that most of the universities still outdated in terms of their modules on the IT. Blockchain is quite rare for the lecturers, even to for the lecturers. So what we are lacking actually is in terms of education modules. So what we are doing right now from Crypto Valley Malaysia perspective, we develop a lot of modules for trainings. For example, we have our professional diploma in blockchain technology. So we are the first in Asia and in Malaysia creating this module approved by Senate of University, UMP, University Malaysia Pahang, and MSU, Malaysia Management and Science University, where now we have 120 students, 7 batches. But still not enough. The demands are there in terms of our development. So it's quite challenging. So we need to create talents. We need to be mainstream, create more awareness like this. And thank you to MDEC, and thank you for MDEC for this kind of session with legendary Mr. Ganesh, the founder of MOL, NAFNAC. We have Datuk Fazli, the CEO of Max Global, Etherscan, very famous overseas. In fact, so this kind of awareness movement need to be established, unite together, and with MDEC, maybe we need to create more talents. I believe that we need to approach more universities and create the local talents, because if not, we will have a brain drain.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of
Maybe Ganesh or something.
Yeah, I think the 3 things that we have to think about when it comes to talent and what you need to create talent. The first, I think, which is actually the most important, is exposure. Now, a lot of us who are early in the internet never got trained how to use the internet. When I first started to use the internet in the year 1995, nobody taught us how to connect a modem to a computer and dial in. At that time, the bulletin board service in Singapore, Jaring hadn't formed yet, or just about to be formed, right? Nobody trained us how to do it.
Remember the modem sounds, right?
Yeah, right. So, but we learned about it, we read about it, and so we had to create our own exposure at that time. Now today is very different. Everybody knows about crypto, everybody has heard about crypto, we all have the same exposure. Anybody born in the valley in San Francisco today, or born here in Malaysia, has the same exposure to new technology. So the world is now flat when it comes to exposure. So in that, we have benefited, I would say. So exposure is the same. The second, of course, is formal training. Now, we may not have the formal training to train blockchain developers. Yes, so I'm sure it's good to know that now we have that there are initiatives such as Crypto Valley Malaysia that's doing formal training. And I think that has to be promoted and encouraged. I think we do have a very proactive government in this country as well when it comes to technology. And of course, I think there need to be more public-private partnerships. MDEC and Crypto Valley Malaysia, of course. I know Dato' Faz has also partnered with MIMOS. So we need to have more public-private partnerships to promote that formal training that needs to be done. And the third, of course, is experience. So once you've got the exposure, once you've got the training, now what's key also is, which is most key actually, is experience. So that's why I think it's great that a lot of tech startups now, we've started to invest in tech startups as well in the space. And these tech startups can either hire these programmers, or for example, even we invest in some of these graduates, for example, and that will help create our first generation of startups. Just like if you look back at 1995, the same time MOL and JobStreet and all were created, it's those guys that then created the people that later formed Fave and whatnot, right? So I think we are in the right direction. I think what's needed right now is that public-private partnerships to promote more training, more formal training maybe, to promote crypto and blockchain. So again, I think it's passed on to MDEC now to...
I think experience is it's hard to do. That's maybe I could probably talk to the most experienced person here in the panel, Etherscan, Mr. Matthew.
Awesome.
Yeah, since you're one of the OGs in the space.
I feel very old. Yeah, so I agree with what being said, one extent on that. So I think, at least on our end, right, I think the biggest impact that we can do is to inspire, is to prove to people you can build global companies out of Malaysia. And if you inspire that new generation, the younger folks coming to the ecosystem will have something to benchmark against. It's the same like what MOL and JobStreet did back in the days, right? So that is inspiring. So it's also inspiring people to build on Web3. And from the industry portion, I think if you look at Web3, right, so Web3 is not geographical. It's not limited by geography, right? So you build Web3, it's basically global, right? So keeping that in mind, with most of the Web3 stuff, it is not geographical, so meaning you compete on a global scale. So when you look at that, right, I think the other thing that you will probably run into is when it comes is a talent crunch. So I say talent crunch, not to say that we don't have the talent, but how do we retain the talent that we already have? So I think it makes sense to have a little bit more emphasis on that. How do you retain talent? How do you retain companies operating within Malaysia and stuff like that? Looking towards the angle, yeah.
If I can add, right? So I mean, I'm operating a company that uses Malaysian talents, right? And two observations. First observation is you actually got to start them young. So like, I think in Malaysia today, across every single university out there, correct me if I'm wrong, right? But there's only APU has a recognized blockchain society. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? And I even have a friend who's trying to start some stuff in like Sunway or Monash, for example, right? They don't get the support internally, even just from even an interest group for blockchain, right? So I'm not sure where the support has to come from the government. Second observation around talent, right? So once these guys graduate, they start working, or they become a blockchain capable dev, right? The problem that we're facing today is, this whole work from home environment. It's actually very bad because Malaysia tech people are very cheap. That's the industry's best kept secret. And right, people like us, we are facing competition. My top guys are being poached by Silicon Valley people. And I have to just sell them a dream that it's not about the money, it's about the vision. And then maybe then you can keep them, right? But dude, I mean, if I'm going to give you an actual pay, like these guys are offering 4 times more than what I can pay them from an industry standard. So I'm not sure, again, how we're going to tackle that disparity in pay, especially working remotely is now a massive thing in the workforce.
Difficult to maintain our staff actually. They will go to another companies after they get the knowledge on this emerging tech and blockchain.
Yeah, I think this issue is a standard issue across the entire tech industry, not just Web3, but the entire tech industry, especially during the pandemic, faced this. So it's actually a blessing that companies like Qasem and Shopee are retrenching people, because at least we can try to hire some of them.
Faz, you got anything to add?
No, I mean, I got comments on like Gen Z and work from home or work from office, but I think that's for a different panel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think a few points. I think number one, I think the government is good at amplifying successes. So if there's already a success, then you can amplify that.
We should sell Matt. So
yeah, like I said, I didn't know he was heading Interscan.
Mohan has known Matt for the better part of 2 decades, and only recently realized he's built a Web3 unicorn. So if it wasn't obvious to Matt's own neighborhood friend, I think we have to do a good job of telling the rest of the world Interscan's based here. Best kept secrets, huh? Yeah. So I guess talent retention. I hear you on the global side. I think it's the same thing with even the games industry. We have a big growing games industry here. We are very competitive priced. So 2 things I think, just drawing from that industry. Number one is the projects that you're working on. You need to inspire. Your project needs to be inspiring, I think. Right? The people that they work with. So these are some of the things that they use. Of course, the culture. Because you, obviously, working for a PlayStation versus working for a local company, right, is very different, right? The sexiness of it. Right, and I recently there's an announcement of Mimos and and together with MyEG on infrastructure, right? Blockchain infrastructure. So how will this infrastructure support the nation moving forward? How is it going to help out? What does it mean for the rest of the population, right?
and the businesses in the country. So I'm probably going to start with Faz, since Dr. Faz, since he's...
Sure. Okay, I'm just trying to think really fast, like how to answer this without tripping over anything. So, we totally acknowledge the fact that like a lot of what is now Web3 or, you know, kind of stemmed out of blockchain, crypto movement, very much grassroots, totally decentralized movement, right? But we also acknowledge the fact that governments and businesses at large have the hardest time trying to incorporate those or participate within these systems. I think, as you can see with many crypto kind of or blockchain projects, it's very retail first. And at some point, maybe some institutions get involved. But so that's where we identify that the next wave, maybe not even the immediate next wave, but surely a wave after that, is that where you connect, essentially blockchains are databases, right? Distributed databases. How do you connect data so that it can flow not just freely, but securely and in a way that can be usable for business between different borders? Because that's where the segregation is now, right? You can see what's happening with the SEC in the US. They're trying to clamp down. Even, you know, you brought up PFPs, right? The SEC a couple of days ago said, hey, now we're going to look at like Yuga Labs, Bored Apes. Maybe that's not just a picture. That's more than that. So we definitely think regulators and motivated governments will catch up faster than the ones, obviously, who are more passive. So one way of getting ahead of the opportunity is trying to make sure that the pipes to be able to move data securely and in ways that governments appreciate and will recognize and honor has to be done. So China is the first country in the world to have done this, where they have a national level infrastructure for blockchain, right? And we're not talking about cryptos or like speculative tokens and all that. We're talking about just movement of data, right, across different value chains. So what MyG did that eventually became Ztrix was negotiate exclusivity to be able to pass data in and out of China. And in that regard, MyG was very, very fortunate. They were not the only suitors, but they were very fortunate because the Chinese government made an active policy decision that Chinese data on their blockchain will always ever remain onshore, at least for the foreseeable future. So now this opens up the other part of the puzzle where how do you then handle data that leaves China and goes into China? So essentially what we're hoping to be able to realize with Mimos is essentially not trying to build apps or dApps for the government. It's trying to make sure that, you know, whatever it is, whether it's supply chain financing, supply chain management, where national data or national-based data moves out of the country and into another country, that can be done securely. So that may apply to some blockchain projects, maybe not all, probably not all, right? But for some who are looking at more industrial use cases, traceability, I think if Andy brought up just now, like they're doing traceability. So these are part of the pipes that you may need. Yes. We don't have an active vision to build all of the dApps. We want to make sure that the pipes are there, the infrastructure is there. But in doing so, you have to probably trial with a few applications in the first generation.
Yeah, I think
maybe just 1-2 minutes. Agree with Datuk Faz. Before you want to enter into the blockchain, for example, right? Most of the enterprises, they don't understand. In fact, also from the government is as well. If your data is still, I can say that Web 1.0, right? Most of the data also manually. So when you want to jump to the blockchain, it's quite difficult. So why we need that some sort of a like blockchain certification, for example, for the starting point. And second thing, from our perspective, we need support from the government to ensure that they understand blockchain very well. They adopt it from the government, then into the private sector. For example, chronology of the blockchain scene history in Malaysia actually started by MDEC. MDEC invited Vitalik Buterin, a small-scale event, 2017. I was there. I met Vitalik. I asked him what we need to do to promote your Ethereum. He said that go to universities. But they won't drop off from university actually, Vitalik, that time. And I start to do some development. So something on the tax also. Country like Estonia and country like Dubai already have a metaverse policy. So we need to have a clear. Thailand also already have a metaverse policy, very clear in terms of adoption into the government. So community need to support by that. Crypto Valley Switzerland, actually it's the first crypto valley in the world. They established in 2016. They have 10 unicorns from Crypto Valley Switzerland. They have 20 billion worth industry from their crypto valley. And our crypto village is the second in the world. 2018 we established, but we are not focusing on the crypto. We're focusing on the cryptographic tag, security, data forensic, and hopefully please pray for us in Crypto Valley Malaysia Association to spur the knowledge, to spur the awareness into the industry and also private public sector.
I think I totally agree. I think what's also very important is the applications. So we talked earlier, I think, about NFTs, and we talked about NFTs being a way to show, I call it ego trip sometimes. I have a Rolex watch, I've got this NFT, right? But then I think when you look at businesses and brands, and you know, we deal with KFC, Unilever, P&G, they're among our clients, and they'll ask, fine, that's well and fine, there's a lot of hype, and since now the hype is gone, we don't even want to touch it. Because they don't really see the application, they don't really see the use case. I think that's what's most important today. If you look at NFT, there are many applications. Bought it your club, you can say, yeah, fine, buy an NFT for 100,000. But why do people buy an NFT for $100,000? It's really because of the other people that have bought that NFT. It's people like Mark Cuban who have bought the NFT. You want to communicate with Mark Cuban, you buy that, bought it your club, you go into the metaverse, the outer side, and you get to talk to them, right? So people buy it for community management, to meet other people. So that's one application. The second application really is, for example, loyalty and merchandising. Brands always want to create loyalty among their consumers. And of course, Web3 enables brands to engage in a very open manner, with their community, and to create loyalty with their community. And the third, of course, is brand activation. There's so many different brand activations that you can do with the metaverse. And today is really the early days. I always say that Decentraland and Sandbox is the Friendster of social networking. Facebook isn't there yet.
But I'm actually curious, following up with the infrastructure question, right? Do we have the tech infrastructure? What are the tech infrastructures needed, right, to develop this, right? So we've got a layer 1 right now, right? I know Matthew's been working on the scanners, but do we have sufficient for developers to build on? Yeah. What are your thoughts, Matthew?
So infrastructure for tech,
yeah,
or Web3.
Yeah, Web3.
It's actually not much different. Well, again, depending on where you're coming in from, right? So you can go really, really deep, the core level, or if you don't go really, very deep, you go onto the app level. So on the app level, actually look at what it is, right? It's not a lot different from Web 2. You're still building, interfacing with what we call API, REST calls and stuff like that. So it's actually quite similar. I would say in terms of infrastructure and...
What about like the cloud? I mean, there's decentralized cloud and there's centralized cloud, right?
Actually, the clouds are all centralized. The clouds are running on Azure, Google Cloud, right? So it is actually centralized, right? So it's a packaged cloud. I would say, okay, again, going back to that centralization, it's not binary, right? It's not 0 or 1, right? So there's a level of centralization. So it's obviously lesser centralized, but it is to a certain extent centralized.
But you know, the fact that in a decentralized system, some parts are centralized services doesn't automatically negate the entire system from, like Matthew said, having a high degree of decentralization. It depends how you measure it, right? Like MX Global, we're definitely a centralized exchange, but there are pros and cons to this approach. It doesn't mean that a Bitcoin in MX is no longer a decentralized Bitcoin compared to when it's on the open network. So I think it's not a black and white kind of area.
Honestly, infra for the government perspective, government need to develop some sort like 5G, 6G. If not, will be a lot of glitch, bugs, you know. And second things, when you talk about infra from the blockchain perspective, Web3 perspective, you need to have more validators. You need to have more miners, not the mining machine for Bitcoin. Something like we need to have more Ether can be established, for example.
Basically, the tooling layer. Is the tooling layer ready?
I would say it's not in tooling. Maybe from it's probably maybe more guidelines if we're talking from the government perspective. So like the ones recently being done, I think IRB came out with their guideline on crypto. So if you know a lot of crypto folks in Malaysia, right, their main concern, right, is taxation, right? So that guideline was extremely helpful. So that really helps. I think obviously SE has the list of regulated exchanges, so we have folks here, right? So that really helps. So I think moving towards that direction, providing more clarity, large impact.
Okay. I'm going to ask one last question, I think, before a bunch of questions that we have from the audience itself. This is too short. The time is too short. how would we position Malaysia? Right. The question is strategically or narratively, right? How will we angle and position Malaysia as a leader, right, in Web3 or the blockchain? Maybe start with Faz, Dr. Faz.
Oh, I thought I was going to have the easiest time at the end. Yeah, to be honest, like I'm not fully decided like what I think the best recommendation would be, but two ways I would think about it, right? Like what have we been good at in the past in the general tech space, and the other is like what are Malaysians really doing in Web3 now? So number one, definitely we've been fairly good at BPO and all sorts of degrees of outsource, right? Like even in the content space, some of the biggest studios in the world work with gaming and animation studios in Malaysia. So maybe that's where we fit, right? And I think there's no shame in that. If you do a very good job, kind of as an ancillary or support service, then okay. I mean, maybe most of you don't know, but Binance's biggest tech support center is Malaysia. They're not Binance staff, but they use BPO services which are based in Malaysia. So that's where I think naturally what we already have as a tech ecosystem can lend itself into the Web3 space. The second is that we have a lot of kings of gamblers and cowboys in the Web3 space, right? So not everybody is a humble by the book kind of like build a very obvious, not to say obvious, but publicly visible thing.
We need to pay Matthew more, right?
Huge, like Matthew. So, but there are other guys who are secret whales, right? So definitely, from a funding perspective, a crypto native funding perspective, Malaysians are very, very active. So that may also determine what kind of businesses we can inherently support in our ecosystem. Yeah.
We had one of the highest hash rates for Bitcoin at some point, remember?
Yes.
For a country that has pretty expensive electricity.
And we also are the top 5 actually, top 3 actually, the biggest mining machines in the world. People don't know about that. But they make it illegally, yes.
I think if we look at the history of the internet and innovation in the internet, the year 2000, all the innovations started in the valley, if you remember, right? With the Yahoos of the world starting there. The year 2010, the innovation actually moved. The hub of innovation moved to China. When WeChat came about, it wasn't WeChat, it was actually QQ came about. Tencent started QQ, and that was kind of the hub of innovation for Web 2. Was actually China. When it comes to Web3, because China has, in a certain extent, clamped down on blockchain, we have an opportunity here in Southeast Asia to be that hub of innovation. So from Web 1 in the Valley, Web 2 in China, and Web 3, I believe, can be Southeast Asia. I think everything all the panelists said of why we can be the hub of, we are already the hub of Southeast Asia, and therefore Malaysia can be the hub of Web3 innovation in the world as the innovation happens in this part of the world or this region.
First, we need to believe to our country. Please show to the world that we are good, we are the best. For example, always when I give a speech overseas, people always ask me, what is different for us to invest in Singapore or in Malaysia? So we can say like this, Singapore is good on the fintech, for example, right? But we are also good on the supply chain, on the manufacturing. We also have a very good talent as well. People can speak English. Infra is better than Thailand, better than Indonesia, and we are same like Singapore. So what Singapore can do, we can do better actually. So I think we can show that kind of a uniqueness, that we have a complete ecosystem. We can be a hub of innovation. We have the best crypto exchange. MS Global will be the best. Soon we have Etherscan. Everything in the world they refer to Etherscan. If you want to do some sort of blockchain verification for the Ethereum.
You can take my job at MDEC.
Yeah, I really think MDEC should consider appointing Effendi as ambassador.
These people, they are legendary. Founder MLL, founder Nafnang, here. So promote the best of our country. Don't talk shit or talk bad about our country in the social media. Talk the best thing. And the latest information that Malaysia is the friendliest country in the world in terms of with an expat. Right? So promoting the best thing. Don't talk bad about our country. That's it.
Right.
Malaysia boleh.
Anything, Jensen?
I mean, I share the same view as Dr. Fazli. I think two parts, right? One is you look at what we have, what's a natural right to win, right? And I think IP content is something that we have been helping the world to develop, right? Some of the top games out there, you know that. I mean, some of you guys are gamers. Elden Ring, right? A lot of their assets were developed by Malaysian studios, right? I think the idea is then how can we? I mean, we have this rich content of IP, and we know that blockchain, one of the key value adds ownership. Ownerships and IP, it's a very massive synergy there, right? So maybe that could be one of the key strategic plays, right? Around how can we drive, pure ownership of IPs.
And we've got a lot of new Web3 IPs coming from Malaysia. Asians, if you guys heard of Nicole from Asian, GCC, all coming from Malaysia, all have raised a lot of money through selling NFTs.
Yep.
And we are the first in the world define digital asset as a policy actually, compared to other countries. Policy under SE, digital asset, we are the first. We define Bitcoin, this kind of cryptos as a digital asset. So we need to proud on that, on the policy making. And of course, MDEC support very well. MDEC invited Vitalik to come to Malaysia 2017, earliest, part of the earliest in the Southeast Asian. Right?
Okay. So I'm going to ask some questions. Thanks, guys. I'm going to ask some questions from the audience. First one is, great panel lineup. What would be your advice to parents to get more young talent into the Web3 space? Is there immediate career opportunities now?
Play Roblox. Play Minecraft. No, really. My kids, they play those. Then you have active experience of like how you start creating assets in game and everything. This is not really, in my view, it's not something where you go to school and learn chapter by chapter of how to do it, right? I think they need the hands-on, and typically if you have young children, these are the kind of games that probably immerse them closest to the builder type experience into a metaverse.
So I think the NFTs had a big impact on kids.
Yeah, people can see a picture of an ape, they can't see it.
Kids going online and putting like pixels together and able to sell it online, that had a super big impact. I really my own kids, right?
Yeah, true.
But I think that said, we do need to kind of not create a mindset among our public that crypto and NFTs is all about speculation. It's not. It just so happened that when new technology comes up, people get all excited, and then when there's excitement, people see speculation, just like in the year 2000. But crypto, blockchain, NFTs is not about making money. It's about creating value, and that's what we need to make sure our public actually knows.
Right, I'm just going to ask one more question. Yep. So everyone says the metaverse is the future, but no one medium has taken off. Why is this? Maybe
just 1 minute. To create metaverse is very tough actually. You need to have 7 layers on infra, discovery, in terms of token economics. So every layers have different programming languages, expertise. So that's the things about. But the future of a metaverse will be, now the value of metaverse is around 20 billion USD, going to be 100 billion forecasting by 2025. This reported by Forbes. So we need to be involved, at least started with NFT first, then go for VR, and need to have a collaboration approach by industries and also government.
I would say you can go back and see why Facebook actually came in the year 2010. What was the biggest differentiation between 2008 or 2005 when Friendster started and when Facebook really started? Facebook actually became the most popular social network in Asia in 2010. And the reason why it became the most popular network in social media, because I bought Friendster about that time, is Facebook had an iPhone app, smartphone app, and Friendster didn't. And that's why Facebook really killed the hell out of Friendster in 2010. That was before I acquired the business, right? So actually what is really needed to grow the metaverse is actually devices. The devices we have today, the Oculus, for example, is just not ideal enough yet. Until the glasses came out, I'm told Apple is announcing something in January. Until devices that don't make you giddy, don't make you vomit after using it for 1 hour come out, metaverse will not proliferate.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a latency issue, right? Yeah. That makes people giddy. But I think one more thing, I think that why metaverses today don't fly yet. I think from a gamer, right, effectively, or from any kind of environment you want to create, right, you need to have a hook, right? And a lot of times, you want to create worlds, your worlds need to have content as a hook, right? It could be a game, it could be some form of engagement, it could be some form of key celebrity there, right? But if your world is just a world, it's just a platform, without any form of content hook, it's going to be empty world. Right? I think that's the approach that a lot of people today are building the infra layers, right? Which is, to be honest, not wrong. You need it to happen first, right? But it takes time for content to actually come on, and when the content comes on, that's where you start seeing adoption. So I think it's more about time rather than whether it will work or not.
So you need the iPhones and the Zyngas of the world.
Yes.
Anybody else? Otherwise,
I think it's I agree. I think it's the devices. I have like 5 or 6 different Oculuses at home from different the
Generation.
J2 and stuff like that. Right? It's just too heavy, too hot. Battery life too short. So I think once that is being addressed, right, with lighter devices, more portable devices, right, you should see that next wave. So basically, it's the issue of infra from the hardware side.
My personal opinion is I don't think the metaverse is going to happen like how we're talking about it today. I don't think it's going to be a portal that you access through a device or through a screen, and then you kind of live in this second world, right? I mean, we've had it before, Second Life, like lots of different iterations of that. Actually, I kind of agree with Ganesh. I think something like Apple glasses might be the one that changes the game. Personally, I believe like what we might in the future eventually settle on and call the metaverse is this augmented reality where you're actually in this room, but there are things in this room which exist on that plane or on that virtual layer that you interact with, and that might be, I mean, because that's such a much more superior user experience than hanging out in VR chat, right?
Yeah, it's cyberpunk, right? All right, I think that's all the time we have. It's a really great session. Wish we had more time. So I would like to thank once again the esteemed panelists that we have here today. Big experience, big dreams, and hopefully you get inspired by them again. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you once again to Mohan and our panelists Matthew, Jansen, Ganesh, Effendi, and Datuk Fazli. Now, Mohan, a little bird has come over and whispered to me in my ear that today might just be your birthday. So we would like to take this opportunity to wish you a very happy birthday.
Thank you. The parties with my kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, Mohan, for spending your precious birthday day with us. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your fantastic insights and input. That certainly clears up a lot about Web3 for me in general and hopefully for the members of our audience. Thank you so much, gentlemen. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, please do take note of the QR code that we have on Slido. Give us your feedback. I know you thought this was a great panel session, so please do let us know. Give us a feedback via survey on the QR code that is on the screen right now. In the meantime, let me just quickly summarize the notes that I've taken for this session. Web3 is the next evolution of the internet, the future, so to speak. It's the current Web 2.0, but with added functionality. But in Malaysia, it's early days yet. Real-world applications for Web3 being developed in Malaysia are fresh and capable of going global, leveraging off data sharing, blockchain, machine learning, AR and VR, mainly in the areas covering NFTs, gamification, and the metaverse. Web3 will give us the capabilities to decentralize community and database ownership, finance via cryptocurrencies, and data sharing in general. But Malaysia faces challenges of building sufficient talent. And the key here is experienced players needed through the public-private partnerships to develop and, most importantly, retain talent. So what else does Malaysia need to build a path ahead? Suggestions include a national level of infrastructure for blockchain like in China, taxation or metaverse policies like they have in Estonia, and more widespread tech infrastructure and ecosystem for our developers to build on. Are we ready? Maybe not quite yet, but in Web3, Malaysia is already the hub of ASEAN, and it definitely has the opportunity to be the global hub of innovation for Web3 once the devices stop making us feel dizzy, that is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for Track 2 today. I hope you found these sessions informative and helpful as we head into Day 2 tomorrow of Malaysia Digital Week. We'll see you in the same room tomorrow for some great discussions at 11 a.m. However, other panel sessions continue until 5:30 p.m. in breakout room 1 with Nazruddin Rahman. So please feel free to head there to learn more on issues pertaining to the tech sector. Till then, I'm Shani Iman Lee. Have a great evening and a safe drive home.